Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Tor. I am an intuitive guide and tarot reader. In this video, I am going to be talking a bit about trusting your inner guidance. As you can imagine, clients, they come to me with questions about what to do next, in particularly in the tarot readings that they come for. Of course, I am really content and happy and also grateful for that I get to hold these spaces for people who are traveling on that spiritual journey and they're trying to figure out how to navigate their life in this moment. However, what's also really important to me is that people like yourself get also to a place on a day-to-day basis where you become more trusting in your inner guidance, right? Also, just to say, I am still working with a spiritual teacher who helps me on my journey and she helps me to navigate challenges. I have a few really trusted friends who I also reach out to when I feel unsure. I will oftentimes pull myself some tarot cards just to check in. What is my guidance really telling me here? Like, what is the extra thing that I can get to really get a sense of what my inner guidance is saying in this moment? However, I think a pattern that I am finding when I am working with my clients is that a lot of people are understandably so afraid of the outcome of trusting their intuition and their inner guidance, right? Questions they will ask is, what will happen if I divorce them? What will happen if I leave the job? Will I ever get another job? What will happen if I go against the values of my family? And like these questions are complicated, right? Because especially like, for example, let's say you are getting a divorce, maybe there's a house involved, maybe there's kids involved. It's a complicated thing. Again, if you are leaving a job, right, we all have to pay our bills. And so that's also complicated because imagine if it takes you a while to get that new role. Or if you're going against the values and decisions and opinions of your family, it might be that then they don't want to spend as much time with you, or they might even not want to spend time with you at all. And these are real risks, right? So, in terms of trusting your inner guidance and intuition in those moments are understandably difficult. You know, moving beyond that, we look around the world. We look around what's happening in America, in the Middle East. People are going through a very difficult time. And we can clearly see that sometimes stuff doesn't work out. And so, again, that does impact how much we can trust our inner guidance and how willing we are to take risks. Because often there's also a sense of risk involved, right? And I mean, I can really only ever speak from my experience and how I trust my inner guidance, but also, you know, the kind of decisions that I make to follow the path that I am on, right? I was recently talking to somebody about my financial situation, and I said to them, it is dynamic. In other words, when you work for yourself full time, you know, clients come and go, it goes up, it goes down, and that's just the nature of the part of it. A part of the nature of being on a self employed, business growing kind of journey. This happens to everybody. I think that what I have done though is, I mean, you know, I don't have a huge safety net at home with my parents, but I know that if really everything went really bad, my parents would pay for tickets and I could go back to Norway and we would figure it out. And I mean, I think this is a part of the mindset that I have cultivated for myself is that everything is solvable. Everything has a solution. Anything can be sorted out in the end. That is a firm belief that I have in myself. Obviously, this will also be impacted of where you stand on sort of your spiritual journey because I do think that every experience I'm going through is a part of my path of life this time around. And the thing is, sometimes you will be, metaphorically walking through the desert. You are between oases, and we kind of have to take the good with the bad, especially if you are on a bit of a spiritual journey, right? I think in the spiritual space, and obviously rightly so, we focus on positivity, optimism, getting the thing that we want out of life, because what else is worth working for? But at the same time, we have to cultivate and nurture an understanding that sometimes stuff doesn't go the way that we had expected it. And that's happened plenty of times in my life. But that doesn't make me think that I'm a bad person or not worthy of love or worthy of success or even worthy of safety. That has nothing to do with it, because I am grounded in my sense of self and in my sense of worth. And I have a firm understanding of what it is that I want out of life, obviously in quite an open-ended way. We also just don't know what's in store for our path of life, right? We don't know what this spiritual journey that we are going to go through this time around is going to be all about. We kind of just have to take it for what it is and take one step at a time. And so, in the midst of all of that, how do we trust our inner guidance and what our inner guidance is saying? And also, how do we know that it's not our ego who's like, oh, I want a red Ferrari, right? I don't know. Is that your inner guidance or is that your ego? There's, of course, nothing wrong with wanting a red Ferrari, but, I'm not sure if that's how your inner guidance will be talking to you, right? The lesson, the inner guidance, the experience that we're going through has a much broader energy to it than that. There could be something that you need to experience. It could be that you are sort of, that thought is put into your mind by spirit and you start pursuing that. But I don't think that the lesson in and itself is to get the red car. It is the experience of the journey to get there. And also perhaps experiencing the disappointment of not getting it or the joy of getting it, who knows. But I was digressing. What I was going to say, and I know this is going to sound a bit spiritually trite in so many ways. However, I still think it is true. It is at least true for me. Is that meditation is really the way, the path, the silence, the stillness, the clarity comes from those extended periods of meditation where we just sit with ourselves and everything else starts to fade away and you truly connect with what that inner guidance is trying to tell you. And then you make choices and experiments and you build habits from there on. And that's another thing that I try to with my life, is to just create, it's just a series of experiments where you are trying, you're testing, you are negotiating, you're experimenting. And I try not to overthink it, right? And I just try to follow this energy within me that is driving me forward to try out different things and see where that guides me in the end, right? And again, let's say you are thinking about dating somebody and you are thinking about taking that further. That's another example, right? Of course, you have to trust your inner guidance, but at the same time, to be able to trust your inner guidance, you have to know who you are, what you value, what you don't value, what your priorities are. And you also need to not be afraid of asking other people about what that might be for them. And somewhere in that place, your inner guidance blossoms and it's real. And so, yeah, I think, how do I feel into my inner guidance? It is just a feeling that is kind of propelling me forward, which have come from the depth and experience of my meditation. And that's the feeling that is moving me forward. And I also, as a side note, don't think that I was not listening to my inner guidance if something didn't go the way that I had expected it to. If anything, my inner guidance was most likely just guiding me in that direction because I needed to go through that experience to be guided somewhere else. It's always a bridge between different areas, right? It is never a static thing, it's a dynamic thing. And like I'm going to repeat what I just said. Just because your inner guidance is guiding you towards something and then it doesn't work out, doesn't mean that that was not a valuable experience. Everything is a valuable experience. And you're just on bridges, right? Going between different landing platforms. And that's all that's happening. It's not that your inner guidance is guiding you in the wrong direction. Most likely, your inner guidance is never guiding you in the wrong direction. Of course, that is never an excuse to invite harm or abuse or anything like that. Hopefully, that gives you in that moment the strength to just say, no, thank you very much, and leave that from your life. And I'm really terribly sorry if that's something that you're going to have to, or something that you've gone through. That's awful. But at the end of the day, when it comes to my inner guidance, I trust my values. I trust my groundedness in myself. And all of that has come from the depth of my meditation. And so if there's anything I can encourage you to do, is to start that practice. Work with the tarot. Work with the pendulum. Although the pendulum is sort of half-half. You have to be very sure of yourself. I don't use a pendulum. But work with the tarot. Work with your meditation. Learn your values. And then make decisions from that place. That is my hottest tip when it comes to trusting your inner guidance. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoy this content, hit that like button, subscribe button. If you have any questions, hit that in the comments below this video. And I'll see you here next time. Thank you so much.